You're standing at the edge of the water. Behind you is everything you've ever known. In front of you is open ocean, so wide you can't see the other side. You don't know if there's land out there. Nobody does. No one has ever gone. And you're about to climb onto a bundle of logs and paddle straight into it anyway. That moment, a human staring at something impossible and going anyway, is the whole story of how we traveled the planet. Because for 300,000 years, human travel wasn't really about roads or wheels, it was about walls. Not walls of stone, but walls of water, of weight, of cold, of pure unknown, each one running across the map and cutting off every place your ancestors hadn't reached yet. And one at a time, over thousands of years, humans found a way through every single one, a journey that eventually carried them roughly 15,000 miles from Africa to the far tip of South America. Today, you don't see the walls at all. You cross an ocean in 6 hours. You drive over a mountain that once took a week to climb. Distance is invisible now, but every easy trip you take sits on top of a problem someone else had to solve first, with nothing but their hands and their nerve. So let's walk up to those walls one at a time. The first wall was water. Humans are walkers, the best long-distance walkers alive. You can cover 20 miles, sleep, and do it again for weeks, because your body is quietly built for it. Spring-loaded arches in your feet, an Achilles tendon that recycles energy with every step, a ligament up the back of your neck that steadies your head while you move, and 2 million sweat glands that let you keep going in heat that forces other animals to stop. On foot, humans spread out of Africa and eventually touched nearly every landmass on Earth. But feet have one hard limit. They stop at the shoreline, and water was everywhere, rivers slicing through every route, seas walling off whole worlds. For most land animals, that's the end of the map. Somehow, humans said no. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, archaeologists found stone tools around 800,000 years old, on an island that has never once been joined to the mainland, not even at the lowest Ice Age sea levels. To get there, someone had to cross at least 12 miles of open water. These weren't modern humans, they were an earlier branch of our family tree. But that only makes it stranger. The pull to cross water runs deep in our lineage. We'll never find the raft since wood and reed rot away in centuries, but the tools are the proof. The crossing happened. The first boat wasn't invented, it was noticed, a floating log someone grabbed and survived. The oldest boat we've ever actually found, a hollowed-out pine canoe from the Netherlands, is around 10,000 years old, but the real technology is far older than any surviving piece of it. Because around 50,000 years ago, modern humans crossed from Southeast Asia to Australia, a journey of open ocean you cannot see across and cannot drift over by accident. Someone built a thing that floated, aimed it at an empty horizon, and paddled toward water with no promised land behind it. That's not desperation. That's a bet placed with your life. Which brings us to the second wall, weight. Here's the cruel limit nobody thinks about. You can walk 20 miles, but you can't walk 20 miles carrying a 200-pound animal you just killed. The human body starts breaking down past 40 or 50 pounds of load. For hundreds of thousands of years, the real cap on travel wasn't how far you could go. It was how little you could bring with you. So humans cheated the physics. First, they dragged kills home on stretched hides, and we know it because ancient hides carry wear marks that only appear when something heavy is hauled a long way. Then they built the travois, 2 long poles lashed into a V with a platform slung between them so the ground carried the weight instead of your spine. One person could suddenly move 100 pounds. Then they did something stranger than any tool. They recruited other species. The dog came first, around 15,000 years ago, the first animal we ever partnered with, and one of its earliest jobs was pulling loads and sleds across snow. But dogs are small. The real shift came from an animal people always forget. The donkey, domesticated in Africa roughly 7,000 years ago, hauling trade goods across brutal dry country long before anyone rode into battle. The horse came later on the grasslands of Central Asia about 5,500 years ago. And we know it was ridden and milked, not just hunted, because the teeth show where from bits and the pottery holds chemical traces of mare's milk. Suddenly, a person could move at 30 miles an hour instead of 4. The world didn't get bigger, it got smaller, fast. Messages outran the people who sent them, and whole trade routes stretched further than a person could ever have walked in a season. And then, strangely late, came the wheel. Here's what almost no one realizes. Humans had already crossed oceans and tamed horses before anyone put a wheel on an axle. The oldest known wheel is only about 5,500 years old, younger than the sailed crossing to Australia by tens of thousands of years. It didn't even start as transport. The first wheels were spun flat to shape clay pots. Someone tipped one on its side, and the cart was born. The early ones were slow, heavy, and cracked on rough ground. A horse was faster without one. But once the lighter-spoked wheel arrived and roads were laid to carry it, wheels, roads, and animals finally clicked together into something that looked like a real transport system. And that's when everything sped up. Trade exploded. Goods, food, and ideas moved further and faster than a person ever could on foot. And marketplaces swelled into the first real towns. Empires became possible because for the first time you could move armies and supplies across vast distances and hold it all together. The wheel came last, but it's what tied the whole thing into a world. The third wall is the one almost no travel story mentions. Cold and the ground itself. Some terrain doesn't drown you or exhaust you. It just refuses to be walked. Deep snow swallows every step. Frozen ground offers no food and no cover. And yet humans went there on purpose. The oldest skis we found are around 8,000 years old from the wetlands of northern Russia, meaning people engineered a way to float on top of snow instead of sinking into it, thousands of years before anyone wrote anything down. We even have the gear on a body. Ötzi, the 5,300-year-old man frozen in the Alps, was found wearing layered, insulated shoes stuffed with grass and built for mountain cold. In the Arctic, sleds and dog teams turned frozen death zones into travel corridors. Humans didn't wait for the world to become passable. They retooled their own bodies to match it until the uninhabitable became just another route, and terrain didn't only block, sometimes it opened. During the last ice age, so much water was locked into glaciers that the seas dropped and land appeared that's underwater today. A grassland called Doggerland connected Britain to mainland Europe. People hunted and lived on ground that is now the bottom of the North Sea. Far to the northeast, a land bridge rose between Siberia and Alaska, and humans walked across it into a continent no person had ever set foot on. The entire Americas, populated by people crossing a bridge that no longer exists. Even the Sahara, the harshest desert on Earth today, was once green, threaded with lakes and rivers and herds, and people moved through it freely. The map your ancestors traveled wasn't the map you know. The walls themselves kept shifting, which leaves the last wall and the hardest one. Not water, not weight, not cold, but knowing where you were going at all. Think about it. No map, no compass, no coastline in sight. You are in the middle of an ocean, or a desert, or a plain that looks identical in every direction, and you have to arrive somewhere exact, or die trying. This was the wall inside the mind, and humans broke it with nothing but observation, sharpened over lifetimes. The Polynesians crossed thousands of miles of open Pacific, reading only the stars. The direction of the ocean swells, rolling under their hulls. The flight paths of nesting birds and the color of clouds stacked over land they couldn't yet see. They found every habitable island in the largest ocean on the planet with no instrument but attention. Desert peoples steered by dunes and wind patterns. Inland groups carried entire landscapes in memory, rivers, ridgelines, and the migration timing of animals. A living map passed down by voice from one generation to the next. Getting there was never luck. It was knowledge, refined until the featureless became readable. So here's the whole picture. Human travel was never really about vehicles. It was about walls. Water stopped us, and we learned to float. Weight stopped us, and we dragged, built, and befriended animals to carry it. Cold and dead ground stopped us, and we strapped tools to our feet and walked over the top of it. And the terrifying blankness of not knowing the way stopped us, until we learned to read the sky, the sea, and the land themselves. Now you tap a glowing rectangle and a car appears. You watch a blue dot glide across a map that always knows exactly where you are. Every wall your ancestors bled against, we've quietly torn down, so completely that we forgot they were ever there. But they were, and every trip you take today, however ordinary, is really the far end of that same 15,000-mile relay, run by people who kept walking up to the impossible and finding a way through. They stood at the edge of the water, with everything known behind them and everything unknown ahead, and they climbed onto the logs. They didn't know what was on the other side. They went anyway. And that is the most human thing there is.